my vision's not a vision at all.
Oh my god.
I'll be banging my head till my brain rots.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Hey everybody, and welcome to GamerSpeak. Today's host is me, Steph, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about Splitgate 2 because, well, I'm obsessed with it, and it seems like a lot of the people who watch my videos are obsessed with it as well in one way or another, whether they're obsessed to hate it or whether they're obsessed to talk about it and try to make it better. But today, I actually wanted to talk about the rank situation. Now, I know I'm a little late to this party, but I wanted to let the dust settle and see what they were going to do, what they were going to hotfix, how the community was going to react before I went and threw my hat into the ring. Because to be honest, I think there's a very clear problem with it, and I don't hear anybody talking about it. So I guess I'll be that guy in the room saying, hey, why aren't we talking about this? So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's start with the first problem with rank. So there's currently no true brackets, meaning yes, you will go from bronze to silver to gold to Promethium, whatever their form of grandmasters is, but it doesn't seem that it keeps you within those brackets. So if your true skill level, right, which is your hidden MMR level, true levels are matched together, you are given an increase of rank whether or not you win or lose. It was a true win-loss system. It wasn't necessarily based on your overall skill. So when I started rank, right away, the first thing that I got with my buddy Will was Promethium or Grandmasters on the other side. So we're like, oh, well, I guess we're not really going to be climbing the ladder if we're going to go directly into sweats. Okay, that's fine. And we just sat down and we had a great time just laughing and playing through it and, you know, just dealing with all the people who are just sweating out in this game right now. Clearly, for people who want to grow and get better, this is a problem because now you don't actually have a chance to kind of grow and get better. No. You're going straight into the deep end and you're just gonna have to live with it. I feel like that's rubbed the community the wrong way. I think it's clear why it rubbed the community the wrong way, because it wasn't communicated that it was going to be this way. In fact, the trailer just kind of sat down and was like, hey, yeah, medals that you can earn. Hey, yeah, brackets. Hey, yeah, we're giving you these like other things where you can level up your gun skins. Like, isn't this great? Isn't this cool? And everybody was like, okay, yeah, cool. And we all just assumed that you would have a normal bracket system, but they didn't. And now they're coming back and saying, oh, well, it's a bug. No. This is not a bug. You copied and pasted the quick play playlist, and then you added medals to it. That's all that you've done. Now, if this wasn't actually intended, it brings us to our true issue that the studio faces, and that is a communication problem. For those of you who haven't worked on software or worked in business before as a business analyst for the last 7 years, I can tell you communication is key, and trying to understand what the developer needs to actually build versus what product expects to be built is where things go to die usually. And I have a really great example. So there's this old story, if you guys haven't worked in engineering before, where a wife sends her husband out to the grocery store to buy some bread. And before the husband leaves, the wife goes, hey, if there's eggs, can you buy a dozen? And he goes, yeah, sure, babe. And he comes back with a dozen loaves of bread. Now, for those who didn't catch what just happened there, he was supposed to buy one loaf of bread. She didn't clarify whether or not she was saying buy a dozen eggs or a dozen loaf of bread, so he came back with a dozen loaves of bread. This happens in engineering and in software all the time. When you go to make criteria for somebody to develop software, you need to be very specific. And in this case, I'm thinking they weren't very specific. They just said, yeah, we want a ranking system where you can earn medals and da-da-da-da-da, and here we are. You can see my point, where developers usually don't play or are super involved in whatever they're actually creating. And so the product person has to be very clear about the requirements and expectations of what you're building. So either the product person was not very clear and the developer totally biffed, and which still blows my mind because you didn't have a QA process. You didn't go and sit down and put this in front of the stakeholders, in front of the product person, and go, here's what I built and then here's how it works. No, you just released it? Huh, that doesn't sound right. So either there's a clear communication problem on how they are developing their product, or it's a communication problem from how they are marketing their product. Because to be honest, there's an approach that a lot of software companies take these days called agile, where you cut out the thinnest version that you can make of the product and get it out to the consumer immediately so that you can start profiting off of it. It is kind of what has ruined gaming. That's why you have things that are early accesses that last 4 to 5 years. That's why you have things where the game is kind of unfinished and they continue to go back and patch it and just make iterations on it. The whole idea of agile is you take your product from a skateboard to a scooter to a moped to a motorcycle to eventually a car. You can't jump in between those pieces. You can't just go from a skateboard to a car. You slowly develop and iterate over time. Now, from a business perspective, this makes a whole lot of sense because you don't want to go and shell out the money for a car if you're not sure that you want to take the car all the way, right? Sometimes the project just has to stop at the skateboard because it wasn't a great idea. And for most of us, this sounds terrible. This sounds like everything that we have hated for the last couple of years. Now, there is some validity to this approach. If you didn't have a consumer that was directly relying on your product and it was something that was very just supportive, you could have a great conversation with your consumer and the product owner and sit down and actually make something that is stellar over a course of time and then sell really well forever. But in gaming, I think Gabe Newell said it best, delays are only for a little bit, suck is forever. Coming back to my original point, that is why it is really important, if they are in fact taking an agile approach, that they communicate it well in the marketing so that the consumer knows, hey, this is something that's actively being worked on. You're going to get a very thin version of this. I need you guys to give me feedback so that we can continue to grow the product. And that's what you should really put in your marketing. Obviously not verbatim, whatever marketing wants to whip up to make it sound good to the consumer. So that you set clear expectations, players go in with those clear expectations and have fun, right? Not come back and get a little bait and switched and now you have everybody kind of upset about it. So I'm kind of sitting here with myself going, which is it? Did marketing screw up or did the product person screw up and basically not give the correct criteria, barely have the engineers test it and rush it out the door? Or, hey, we're not going to meet deadlines, so let's go ahead and just get out what we have and just say, oops, we didn't know. It's tricky, but the clear root cause here is bad communication. And if Splitgate continues to have bad communication, we're in for a real problem. Now, it did start the launch with some pretty terrible communication, so I'm leaning towards maybe we're just not sitting down and really thinking these things out, and it makes me worried about the game because I love it a lot. They put a lot of time and effort into this. This is very robust. Like I've said in another video, I really don't want to see this game go away. I think it has a strong future, but I think if they don't figure out this communication issue, it's just going to be an uphill battle the entire time. They're not going to have a good time. They're not going to make profits. This game is going to face some serious harsh decisions real quick here in the future. To the studio's credit, they do a podcast. I'm not sure that most people are aware of it, where they sit down and they talk about what they're currently working on, some of the things they're looking at and looking for feedback. And again, they're very open to feedback. So again, I'm not trying to paint them in a horrible light. I am just giving you what's behind the curtain. Now, for the second communication issue that we have going on with this game, and unfortunately there is a second communication issue, is it seems like developers are reaching out to content creators directly and trying to get feedback directly from a content creator. That is very scary stuff because developers shouldn't be the ones doing that. That should be the product people. Developers, again, just like my story with dozen loaves of bread, they should only be focused on what the criteria are coming from the actual product person. Now, don't get me wrong, I think there is a good mismatch of like developers sitting down with the product person there and developers asking direct questions on how they would consume the product. I think that's very healthy, but it shouldn't be just a free-for-all communication with someone outside of the company. That is very concerning. So if developers are already reaching out to content creators, in which there are a few content creators who make Splitgate who've all been like, oh yeah, look at me, I got to talk to the developer, oh boy, that's not okay. Like I know that's a feather in your cap, makes you feel special, makes you feel like a journalist, like you're getting information out there soon, but that's not a good thing for the company. You really just don't want rogue agents going out there getting mismatched information and then conflicting with some of the criteria that the product people are trying to put together and actually create the product, right? that's where I'm kind of going, okay, we need to lock it in and pull everybody in and just say, hey guys, let's focus on what we're supposed to be focusing on. Let's not go out to outside parties. Because think about it, you don't want your Fortune 500 company to be running around and taking advice from someone who makes $3 grand on YouTube. Like that's a scary road. Plus with a YouTuber going, oh my god, everything that I said in my last video was so right, and they're gonna make all these changes that are coming forward, kind of steals the thunder of the good PR that they need for themselves. On top of that, they won't necessarily be making the changes immediately, so the YouTuber's kind of setting false expectations of when these changes may occur. And I know by me having this behind the curtain, deep kind of analytical talk with you guys feels like the pot calling the kettle black, but what I'm really trying to get at is I want you guys to be informed and be able to recognize some of the things that are going on within game companies so that you just don't immediately jump to conclusions that everything is doomed. When you start picking apart what the problems are, it helps build a bigger picture of what you can expect as a consumer in the future. Now that being said, if there's anybody who works on Splitgate who comes across this video, here are some humble suggestions that I have that you should take to your team. And this is not advice about the game, but the actual teams, and if assuming this was an actual unattended bug. One, you should focus on work on your Scrum team's definition of done. Definition is ready. You need both of those things really well defined if you're going to be making tickets to execute on. You will also need to work with a product review. If you're not doing a product review, you need to start doing a product review, and potentially even bring a review and a second review with stakeholders. You most likely need to set a better release cycle and cadence. Remember, delays are temporary, suck is forever. And I know you guys have probably been in crunch time, but retros are a really powerful tool that you can use with your team. If you're so open for feedback, I would assume that you would also want feedback from your team members to figure out what went wrong. Probably work on your QA regression. I'm sure that's got quite a bit of tech debt with everything that you're trying to scale and fix at the same time. I think working on the VR and the arena at the same time has really split your team very thin, and you need to take some time to make sure that your QA is in check. If you guys are wondering who am I to make these suggestions, well, like I said, I was a business analyst for the last 7 years. I also wore the hat of a product owner, senior product owner, scrum master in QA, who specifically worked in Agile and Agile Dojo and Six Sigma framework. So I kind of know what I'm talking about. For everyone out there who have no idea what I just said, I am him when it comes to developing software. All right, and I think that covers just about everything that I wanted to talk about when it came to Splitgate 2. I want to thank everybody for their support. Thank you for all the subscriptions lately. I really appreciate it. We love making content where we dive into games and pulling behind the curtain and talking about more serious matters. My wife and I both upload on this channel, so there is tons of different types of content, different things you want to take a look at. Quite a few viewers on my last video recommended that I play the finals, so that will actually be my next project. So if you like the finals, stick around. I will also be covering Splitgate 2 in the future, so if you really love Splitgate 2, this is the place to check it out. If you guys have any recommendations for any games that you would like to see me cover, or any topics that you would like me to discuss, please go ahead and leave a comment down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always, and take care.